Hey there, my name's Marley and welcome to a new reading vlog. Today we are starting a reading vlog where I read dark academia books. This is going to be kind of like my Halloween themed reading vlog for the month. In the past, I think I've done like horror themes and thriller themes for Halloween. This year I thought I would do dark academia. This is a reading vlog theme many people have done before. Like, I am not unique in this, but I have never done a dark academia vlog. I have definitely read some dark academia books. You know, a lot of YA thrillers have that vibe. If you don't know what dark academia is, actually let me look up an official definition. Okay, this is from Wikipedia. Dark academia is an internet aesthetic and subculture concerned with higher education, the arts, and literature, or an idealized version thereof. Yeah, so a lot of these stories, they just focus on like darker topics, stuff to do with education, learning, going to school. They're normally set out of school, stuff like that. So I'm gonna read 3 books for this. First up, we have The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This, from what I've seen, seems to be like the classic dark academia book. I know it follows a group of students at this college who kind of formed this little like clique or cult surrounding this one professor, and then there's gonna be like a murder of some sort. Like, one of them is murdered or they commit a murder together, that kind of thing. I have started this one, so I won't say any more until I get into my update. So I'm getting that from the library. For the other 2 I have physically here, we have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I know this is dark academia with some fantasy elements, so that should be good. We're following a main character who goes to Yale University and gets wrapped up in a secret society there. They tamper with forbidden magic, they raise the dead, and sometimes they prey on the living. So this should be a little bit of a different take on it, as it has those fantasy elements. Then we have If We Were Liars by Rio. This is similar, where we're following a group of students who are all very into Shakespeare, and I think working on like a Shakespeare play. There were 7 of us then, 7 bright young things with wide, precious futures ahead of us. Until that year, we saw no further than the books in front of our faces. I know this goes between different timelines. I know one of the friends in this group of students is murdered, similar to The Secret History. We're trying to kind of uncover who the true murderer was. So this should be interesting. As I said, I have started The Secret History. It's gonna be a long one, but I'll check in when I am a certain percentage through that. Let's do a little check-in for The Secret History. Hopefully Peach will not cry too much in the background, because she's very, I don't know if she's excited or scared when she sees the pigeons, but she'll make this little noise at them. Have my little coffee mug. Anyways, I gotta say, I'm a bit worried about this book. I think it might really set me back with my reading schedule, because it is a very long book. I make the font very small on my e-reader, but it's like over 400 pages. It's basically double the length of most books I read on my e-reader, and it's a library copy, and at least on my e-reader, any books from the library, it will say how many hours you have left, and it's like not going down from 10 hours. And I've read like, how long have I read? I'm at 23%, and it does say 8 hours to go now, but it's gonna take a while. Basically, we are following Richard. We're just following his life. He goes to the other college first, and then he switches up his college degree, ends up going to this place in Vermont. He's originally from California, so it's a bit of a change up. He tries to get into the Greek class there, and he's not allowed in. It's like some exclusive thing where the Greek teacher only takes a few students. It's this whole thing. So he's instantly intrigued by that, and he's intrigued by this group of students that this professor teaches. There's 5 of them. And then he ends up having this interaction with a couple of the students. They end up letting him in basically to their little exclusive club and to their classes where they mostly learn about like Greek languages, whatever, history, right? And I can really see that other books have been inspired by this. I feel like I've seen these kind of tropes and these ideas before. All of these kids or students seem to be very, you know, privileged, coming from rich, privileged families. Richard is not that, but he's like pretending to be that to fit in. And then as we're kind of getting to know the characters more, we see that like a lot of the other ones are kind of faking it as well. So there's 4 guys and then 1 girl named Camila. The guys are Edmund, but he goes by Bunny, which I have not read that book Bunny by Mona Awad, but I do wonder now reading this if it's any sort of connection or any sort of shout out that this character in this book is called Bunny. The character named Henry, Charles, and Francis, I think, are the other ones. It's one of those books that's not super dialogue heavy. A lot of it will just be Richard's narration in his head, taking us through the school year, describing each of the students in his point of view. But there is, as much as he's like getting close to these people, there is something they're clearly still hiding from him. There's still times they will all go off and hang out without him. I don't want to spoil, well, I don't know what's going on, so I can't really spoil, but like they'll have like cuts and bruises on them, like weird stuff like that. And there was a rumor that they deal with like devil worship or things like that. So I'm interested to see. I assume that's what the twist is kind of gonna be, is like what these students are actually up to. Oh, and I should have also said, at the very beginning, we know that this is Richard reflecting back on his time in school. So he is, you know, now all grown up, and this is him reflecting. So I think that's why the narration is like that, like so much in his head. And we do know that one of the characters is dead, and I won't spoil who, even though it does say in the very beginning who it is. It is intriguing to kind of know who's gonna die, and it should be interesting seeing how we get there. I did read some reviews though. People seem to either really love it or hate this book. It seems like there's like hundreds of pages where nothing's really happening, and I could definitely see that being very just like meandering and like, okay, let's get to the point. So far I'm not minding it, but I am like only 25% of the way through, like a quarter of the way through, so we have a lot to go here. Alright, I have finally hit the halfway point in The Secret History. There are some interesting things that have been happening, some kind of interesting reveals, but I do feel like it's like so drawn out and there's just so many details included that it's not really needed, and it's making it feel like very slow paced. As I said, as we already know, it is a very long book, and this is why. And I'm like, I don't know if it's gonna pay off. Like, we are getting to know a couple of the characters really well, and they are interesting, like the character of Bunny and Henry. But some of the other characters we don't really know that well. So it could have been like better if maybe we got to know those other ones as much as we know Henry and Bunny. But those characters are interesting and they are very unlikable. Well, especially Bunny, but a lot of the characters are kind of unlikable. But I don't know, it's like we know what's gonna happen, right? Again, as I said, we know who dies from the beginning, and we're just kind of like slowly getting there. And so I'm just very curious to what the second half of the book is going to bring, if it's going to be any more like shocking things or what. But yeah, I just thought I would check in since I'm at the halfway point. Hopefully I can finish soon. It's a new water fountain.
You're a pro now. Watch how these roll. What a perfect flower. Yay. Practice makes perfect.
I think this is the best one.
That was our first one. Second one. We got better.
Guys, I have finished The Secret History finally. And you know what? I'm actually gonna give it 4 stars, I think, which is a little bit of a higher rating than I expected that I was gonna give it based on like kind of the first half of the book. I would have thought it would be 3 or 3.5, but I do think by the end, you know, we spent so much time with these characters, which I know I was complaining about a little, but it kind of does pay off in this book. I feel those characters I mentioned before of us not really getting to know them as much, I feel like we did get to know them a lot more in the second half of the book, and they were all still pretty unlikable, but they were all very interesting. There definitely were pages of like not very much happening, and definitely parts where like it's just not, again, it probably wasn't needed like I said before, but I did feel like it had a good ending, and I did feel like it explored so many different themes. It would be definitely an interesting book to have like a big discussion about or to really analyze. Probably a lot of stuff that even went over my head, but I guess the main point of it is kind of what happens when people are isolated, because as I said, the characters are all kind of only interacting with each other and not having a lot of outside influence. I don't know, I just feel like by the end I was like, okay, I actually like what this story entailed, even though it deals with so much bad behavior, so much terrible behavior that I was like shocked and very disturbed by it. I think it actually was pretty good. So I'm gonna give it a 4 star, and despite how long it was, like it actually was always pretty easy for me to read. Like I was never really wanting to put it down or hating it or anything like that. So overall, I probably would recommend this if you like books that deal with all these different dark themes and you don't get easily bored by a book that's too long and kind of meandering, then I actually think it would be worth reading. Hey friends, so I'm checking in because I have been reading Ninth House. I am over 150 pages in so far. This is how far I am. It's going relatively well, probably better than I expected, because I was getting quite nervous about this when I looked at my friends and following reviews on Goodreads. There's a lot of good ratings, but there's so many like negative ratings of this book, like 2 and 3 stars, and I don't read a ton of adult fantasy. I am feeling a little bit like this is going over my head a bit, and I don't know if it's because it's adult fantasy instead of something easier to grasp like YA, which I normally read, or if it's anything with Leigh Bardugo's writing, but let's see if I can summarize it a little bit. Essentially, this is the first book in the Alex Stern series. So Alex Stern is our main character, but kind of an issue I have with this is that we dive right in and we're seeing Alex like already involved in this world rather than getting that introduction that I like in urban fantasy where like our main character maybe doesn't know about the magical world and we're getting brought in with them. And I find then it makes it easier for us as the reader to understand because we're learning with the main character. That's not really happening. Like Leigh chose a different kind of format to do it where we're seeing multiple timelines. So in one of them, Alex has been going to Yale University for I think a whole semester now. I think she's on her 2nd semester. Basically, she is a part of this group called the Leigh House or something, which is basically what the Ninth House is. And at Yale, essentially, there are 9 different secret societies who all have a different kind of magic or different rituals that they do. And then the Ninth House that she's a part of is basically like, I was explaining to my boyfriend as like the cops of the societies, like the people who are monitoring them and making sure they're all following the rules. I think also helping to protect them as well. We're seeing some different magic that they are capable of doing. But the reason Alex is so special and she got recruited to be a part of this is that she can see ghosts. And they call them grays in this book, but basically it's ghosts. and so she has been able to see these ghosts her whole life. So she's been like tormented by them. She's always been so confused of why she's the only one that can see them, and this led her down a dark path where she was a drug addict and had some dark stuff in her past because of that. So we've been learning about that slowly throughout, but as I said, we're seeing that current timeline, and then we're also flashing back to when she first started at Yale, but that point of view is from this guy named Darlington, and he's kind of like her mentor, the guy who's training her. So we're seeing his point of view in the past as he's introducing her to the world. Kind of weird way to do it. And then in between, we are getting some little passages from the life of Leigh, procedures and protocols of the ninth house. So little excerpts from this sort of guidebook, which has been helpful for me because I feel like we just dove right into this and I'm having trouble kind of grasping this world and this magic system. I think those are all of the timelines we have. So yeah, so that magical stuff, the world building stuff, it's been a little hard to wrap my head around because of the way she's telling the story. It kind of reminds me of the Grishaverse series that she wrote, because again, that series did not have our main character entering the world. She was already like in it from the start. I never loved how Leigh built up that world. I always found it kind of confusing. So just a little bit of a critique there, but I do feel like now I'm understanding it a little better. I'm just kind of going with the flow. We're slowly learning about each of the different societies. And then one of the most interesting parts is that in our current timeline, Alex is kind of investigating this murder mystery plot, and we know I love a murder mystery. So I think that's going to be a highlight of this book for sure. And within that plot, she's working kind of closely, kind of against this cop. Oh frick, what was his name? I forget his name, but I've definitely heard people mention the cop's name. So I think that's going to be the romance for the book, is Alex and that cop. Oh, Turner? I think his name's Turner. So I think that should be fun. They have this kind of, not enemies to lovers, but I mean, they're kind of like not getting along. Like she kind of is annoying to him and vice versa. So I definitely like that dynamic. Also a weird thing's going on with Darlington. He kind of seems like a love interest for her too, but I don't know, since he's her mentor, maybe it'll be more of like a familial brother-sister thing, but I think it alluded to the fact that they've slept together. So I don't know. But yeah, I'm just happy that I'm not hating this, because it's the second book in a row now that I was worried about, just because they're a bit longer, and just with being dark academia, I wasn't sure how much I was gonna enjoy these books, and I actually am enjoying both of these, and I'm not getting bored, and it is a pretty good time. So yeah, I'll check in again when I've read some more. Peaches in the background. Not gonna lie, it's been a minute since I last updated, at least for me on my end. I took a break to film my last reading vlog, which is up now. I'll link it. But I have dove back into ninth house, and I'm actually really enjoying it still. I am at about 350 pages, so 100 pages left. It actually is quite funny. I don't remember Miss Bardugo being that funny in the Shadow and Bone series, but maybe I'm just forgetting. But I feel like there's a lot of good sarcasm and funny moments in this. To contrast the darkness that we are getting, it's definitely dark. There's murder, there's sexual assault, which I didn't totally love how that was dealt with in this book, but anyways, we've had some, you know, reveals, plot twists kind of thing, and we're still just finding out more about this murder mystery. The girl that was murdered, it seems like she had a lot of connections to a bunch of different societies at Yale that Alex is still investigating with our little cast of characters, which I'm really enjoying, all of our main characters and also their little relationships and interactions. That's where a lot of the humor comes from. Obviously, Alex is a really complex character. There's a character named Dawes who was actually a little bit unlikable at first, but now I really like her. Turner, the cop who I already mentioned, and Darlington. I don't know if I said before, but Darlington is actually missing in the present day plot line, so we're only seeing him in those flashbacks. So that's another little mystery we're having of like, where is Darlington? And I miss him. I want him to come back, but I have heard, I think, from other people talking about this series that the second book, Hellbent, is more of Darlington's book. So I think in the second book, we're going to see like where he is during all this time. And that book is called Hellbent. So I wonder if he's like in hell or something. Speaking of hell, I do think this is a great book to read for the spooky season, for the fall time. I really do recommend you read it during this time. It's very witchy, spooky, got the ghosts, got the weird magic. It's a vibe. It's a vibey book, and I'm having a good time with it still. Here she is again. Yeah, so I finished 9,000, and I just have to say, well, sorry about the lighting here, it's not great. I just have to say, Leigh really popped off with this book. Like, this is hands down the best book by her that I have read. I'm gonna give it 5 stars. I honestly didn't expect it. Like, all of her Grishaverse books have been like 4 or 3 stars for me. So I was like, you know, I'll get a 4-star out of this maybe. I have to give it 5. Like, it actually was really, really good. And the end was super dramatic. It felt like I was watching a movie, you know, where the ending was like so epic. I almost thought it was like almost a little cheesy because it was so like, I don't know how to explain it. I don't want to spoil, but we had multiple twists also. We had multiple reveals surrounding that murder mystery and like who the villains were and stuff like that. It just felt very epic, and I'm just a big fan. And as much as I was sometimes struggling to wrap my head around the magic system and stuff, it actually was not a huge issue at all. I really loved it. And yeah, it had those dark academia themes like privilege and being obsessed with power and stuff like that, but with this extra layer of like there being actual magic involved and actual murder, the history, and blah blah blah. Anyway, I really loved it, and I would highly recommend this to everyone. I don't know. So that is cool. That is a cool little surprise. And now we have 1 book left. Let's see if it can live up to the first 2 books, which both actually pleasantly surprised me. I liked both of these books more than I thought I would. Low blood sugar. Time for a vlog update in front of the closet. I've been reading If We Were Liars by M.L. Rio. This is an author I've only heard of this book from them. I don't know if they've written anything else. I need to look it up, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm actually loving it. I wish I could just sit and read all day, but tonight I'm actually going to a work event, like a work dinner. So that's going to take up some of my time, but hopefully I can read a little bit. I'm like 150 pages in, which is almost halfway. I reached the end of Act 2. So this book is separated into 5 acts, I believe, because all of Shakespeare's plays were 5 acts, right? And this is very heavily influenced by Shakespeare. So I'll tell you the plot. It's quite similar to A Secret History. It definitely, I think, was like inspired by it a bit. Well, first of all, we're seeing this guy, Oliver, and he's been in prison for like 10 years. And he's finally getting out, and we don't know what he's in for or anything like that. But he's getting out, and he's talking to this cop or like detective that worked on his case. And the cop is like, you know, I'm retiring, or like I'm leaving the force, but I just want to know like the truth. Like, you have kept a secret all these years. Like, please, can you just tell me the truth since I'm like leaving the field anyway? And Oliver is like, sure, I'll finally tell you as long as I still can get out of jail and like this isn't gonna come back to me or anything. So we know that in present day, and then it's like him telling the story, right, in flashbacks. I think it's 97 is the flashback, 1997. So in that flashback, we're seeing Oliver, and he is attending Delector Classical Conservatory, which is basically like an arts school, arts university, and he is specializing in drama. They particularly only focus on like Shakespeare and Shakespeare plays, and there is only 7 of them in his class in senior year because it's like really competitive, and they will like kick people out every year if they're not good enough. So he's in his senior year now, and there's 7 of them. And so at first it was a little overwhelming because we're told all these people's names, and I'm like, okay, who is who? Because it's a bigger group than The Secret History and more girls, which is nice. But yeah, there's 7 of them. They're all kind of like a little trope. I pretty quickly got to know who each of them were. The mainly interesting thing is that there's one guy named Richard who's like the best actor and keeps getting cast in all the best roles, but he's very cocky and like very egotistical. He knows he's the best. So he kind of stood out as a character. He's dating this girl Meredith, who is kind of like the best female actress, and she's also very like sexy and seductive and that kind of trope. There's a girl next door girl, and then there's this other girl who's kind of just like Then for the boys, we have Oliver, Richard, who I said. Then we have Alexander, who's basically, I would know him as like the drug addict one, or like the one who's really into substances, and he's also gay. And then there's James, who is the best friend of Oliver, and like they're roommates. And I think I heard that there's some gay stuff in this. Obviously, I already said Alexander's gay, but I'm sensing some tension between Oliver and James, who are like friends, but I feel like something more is gonna happen. And there's a lot of competition between these people. They end up doing the Julius Caesar play. And so we're seeing them work on that. We're just seeing their lives and this tension kind of growing between the friend group. So again, that's why it's similar to A Secret History as well. You know, again, it's dealing with power, privilege, all these same things that the Dark Academia books have dealt with. Isolation, again, like it's only the 7 of them in this class. Like they're so separate from the rest of society. I think we're seeing with Dark Academia that gets very dangerous. But the only thing was we didn't know who was gonna die like we did in A Secret History. But now at the part I just left off, we did have the murder or like the death. But I don't know any of the details yet. But it was the person I kind of suspected that it would be. And I won't say too much, but like it kind of is still mirroring The Secret History with who it was. I don't want to constantly compare to A Secret History, but like I can't help it that I read these both so close together, and this was clearly influenced by it. But I'm very interested to see where it goes from here. I like that we have more characters, as I said, so we can have more like interesting things going on. I'm just curious to see if there will be more parallels to A Secret History that can like confirm that they are connected kind of. Another thing about this, they're very pretentious. Like these people will constantly just quote Shakespeare in their everyday conversations. It's very funny. I see why some people didn't get into this book. When I was looking at Goodreads reviews, some people really didn't like it and thought it was boring. I'm not bored at all so far. I'm really interested, and I just think it's kind of funny that these people are so like think they're so better than everyone and like quote Shakespeare in their day-to-day lives. Like who does that? That's all for now. Okay, it's 1:30 in the morning. I stayed up to finish this, and I have to say the ending really got me. Like I have some little tears coming. I don't want to say too much, I don't want to spoil, but it's like a very impactful ending and caused me to like immediately look things up of what people are saying, feeling a lot of things. I will do an official update tomorrow when it's not so late, but like, wow. Hello people, it is now the morning. I'm cleaning, as you can see my broom back there. My hair is crazy. Anyways, so yeah, I finished this last night, as you saw, and we're gonna like rewind a little bit back because the last time I updated, it was after Act 2. So Act 3 was probably my least favorite act of the book. It definitely slowed down. It became a little boring. It got a little bit boring. But then Act 4, I feel like that's when it did pick up again a little bit with this drama between all the characters, the interpersonal relationship stuff going on. Act 5 was of course the ending, and you saw like that really affected me, and I really liked it. This deals so much with trauma, the trauma that these people go through, trauma bonding, I would say. I do wish we got to know the character who died better. As I said, he died like after Act 2. If we're comparing to The Secret History, which I have been, like we got to know that character who died like a lot more, and I found it was like more impactful for us as the reader if we knew them more. So that was something that this book was lacking like a little bit. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this for this particular book, but the characters were definitely unlikable. Not as unlikable as The Secret History, but there were certain things that were like bugging me about the characters, in particular our main character, who is sort of portrayed as like this good guy. I don't know if I dove into that before, but he was very much like that plain guy that like is just nice and everyone loves. So kind of similar to the main character in A Secret History. But when I actually looked at him, I'm like, he's actually unlikable to me. Like he only cares about this friend group, right? And his own family. I know they're not the best, but like his one sister is struggling with an eating disorder, and he like resents her, and he like resents his parents for like supporting the sister and like pulling his funding for his school and putting it towards his sister's like therapy. And he was just like so pissed and like never spoke to them again. But they try and make him seem like he's this really nice guy. Anyways, there is a lot of unlikable stuff going on. I forgot to mention that the reveal of like who the killer was, or like that sort of reveal, I found it to be quite obvious, which is another thing that kind of was a negative, I guess. I don't know if like the author meant for it to kind of be obvious for us. They might have, and it was just like us waiting for the main character to like catch up, but it wasn't really like shocking, you know, like that part of it. By the end, as I said, like that was probably a 5-star ending. It was so tragic, as we are dealing so much with Shakespearean plays and especially the tragedies that he had. As you can imagine, this book was tragic. It was very emotional for me at the end, but it also left it a little bit like open-ended. And I kind of love endings like that as much as they bother me. That's why I was immediately searching for like, what do people say about it? What are kind of like the theories? But for me, I don't really know what my theory is. I think I'm just gonna leave it open-ended like that. So yeah, 5-star ending, but as I said, I had a little bit of like criticisms throughout the book, so I couldn't quite give it like 5 stars. I think I'm gonna give it 4 stars because I did overall enjoy this a lot. There's a few other things I feel like I could mention of criticisms, but I don't want to go into spoiler territory. I went in not knowing that much and I feel like it was good. But stuff with like the romance, so this is definitely more like romance heavy than our other dark academia books that we read. Again, makes sense going with the Shakespeare, because I hate Romeo and Juliet, right? I hate Romeo and Juliet as characters and their romance because I think it's so dumb that they like fall in love at first sight, blah blah blah. So yeah, I didn't ship the romances in this, if you know what I mean. I was kind of like resenting certain things that went on with that. Anyways, I don't want to get into specifics, but I think overall like this is a very successful reading blog. I was not expecting to enjoy these books so much. I think we can definitely say I'm a dark academia girly, and I'll have to research some more like famous popular dark academia books to read, because these are some of like the most popular ones and I see why. So thank you guys for watching. Definitely let me know your thoughts below, like if you enjoy dark academia or any commentary about that genre, especially if you read any of these books. Let me know, and hope you have a great rest of your day, great rest of your October. Please subscribe if you've not already, and follow me on my social media, Goodreads, Instagram, all that stuff, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.